Hello, my name is Jacob Newell, and I want to welcome you to the YouTube channel for Old Oak School of Tao. Currently, we have some old Tai Chi videos on here, but in recent years, our emphasis has shifted to Orthodox Taoist meditation. And we have an emerging suite of talks and videos that we are posting here, but we're reserving them for our practicing members. So you are not going to see them here if you're just viewing publicly. But I wanted to have this intro video to just give you a sense of what is it that we do here. So what is Orthodox Taoist meditation? So we call it Zowang, which means sitting, forgetting. So in Zowang, we take a posture, we sit, and we let go of my idea, and we let go of my aspiration. We let go of my struggle. And we enter into the constant, nameless stream of reality. And Taoist teaching says that, dude, we're already here. So we don't enter through effort. It's not like most practices where we struggle, strive, and build some kind of improved state. That's not Orthodox Taoist meditation. We're releasing into where we've always been. We're releasing into what we've always been, even before mother and father are born. So we use the original teaching of Taoism as view teaching. So the Tao Te Ching is the original teaching text of Taoism, and we use it as a meditation manual. We call our path Wu Wei Dao to distinguish it from the complex and elaborate cultural tradition of Chinese Taoism. So what is Wu Wei Dao is softening into our nature. Softening into our nature inside, softening into our nature outside. If inside and outside even exist, softening into naturalness. We don't need Chinese cultural traditions to do that. Lao Tzu, who's the legendary author of the Tao Te Ching, said that we don't need learning and we don't need effort. So we use Zowang as an embodied practice of Wu Wei Dao. So in our school, we have 3 gates of teaching. The first gate is the Taoist blog of Nameless Stream. These are just publicly available writings about the view teaching of Wu Wei Dao or various aspects of usually meditation, qi cultivation, or just view. And you can access the blog at www.oldoakdao.org. And we go pinyin here, so Dao, D-A-O. And our middle gate is 1-year initiation into the practice of Zhuang, and we call it our Wu Wei Dao cultivation group. And in this group, we commit to daily practice for a full year, and we will, I don't really want to say learn or develop, but we'll come to experience the finer points of the posture and the method of sitting still. It's a very simple practice, and it could be that it's simplicity itself, but we probably need to be introduced. There's a lot of fine points of natural posture that help us to be able to let the qi calm down, let this kind of open up. But it's a natural process. And part of our view is that we don't do cultivation. In Wu Wei Dao, we set up a space that allows Dao to cultivate. So we will, in this group, we get the method and we do a deep dive into the Tao Te Ching. We take one chapter of the Tao Te Ching and we recite it along the moon cycle. We go from full moon to full moon. And we recite one chapter every day. And we have an internal unpublished commentary that we use that breaks down the chapter line by line. And what's happening is a transmission that we call a wordless teaching. It's not really dependent on scriptures. So there's a scriptural transmission, but the transmission is it's not study. It's not like study the text. That's not what it is. We do have a kind of study aspect to it, so we will look at the Chinese characters and get some of the beautiful imagery of Chinese language. But the characters and the teaching, the chapters are all existing within a broader context that is the transmission of Taoism. It's just effortlessly abiding in this moment. We don't need thinking. We don't need effort. We don't need struggle. We don't need texts. From this perspective, having some textual teaching can be very profound support. It can also be a burden that can draw us down into a quagmire if we just go down the study path. And that's actually at the heart of Taoist teaching. Study is one direction. Tao is softened from there. So our path, excuse me, it's not a path of learning and growing and building, and certainly not a path of taking on Taoism. We engage the teaching of Taoism to experience what we are, to adjust our relationship. So really the heart of what we're offering is in this middle gate. But something interestingly that arises when we do this practice is some appetite. And maybe we already have this appetite, like I want to learn Taoist stuff. Well, if we really enter into Zhuang, that like I want to learn will dissolve. And a new kind of ground opens up at something fresh. And this fresh ground likes to have expression. And so we have this third gate, which is more of an extensive apprenticeship that is looking at various aspects of Taoist cultivation and tapping different bits from the complex and elaborate tradition of Chinese Taoism and exploring. So we look at a little bit of Taoist history and culture. It's pretty light, though. This is not a Taoist studies program for sure. It's not that. But as practitioners, in one sense, knowing history has no value. If we are really a Wu Wei Dao practitioner, we can say that. But from another perspective, we can just as easily say, understanding historic context is extremely important. Both of those views have their place. So here at Old Oak School of Tao, we prioritize if we have to give it a name, we would call it Tao. We prioritize Tao. And within this context, it's nice to know some history. It's nice to understand Eastern culture, Western culture, and how does this practice, if we are a Westerner, what is our proper relationship with the tradition of Chinese Taoism? Becoming a Chinese Taoist may be of interest. It may not be necessary. But I do think it's good to explore some history. So we have this little kind of very small little academic piece. But next we have conceptual teaching. Interestingly, Zhuang, what we call Orthodox Taoist meditation, is a non-conceptual transmission. It's not based on philosophy. It exists before philosophy arises. But Taoism has really tremendous and mind-blowing philosophical concepts and symbolism. So we dive into this. We look at the I Ching and there's a lot of wonderful perspective. Again, if we approach the study of Taoist philosophy and symbolism from only an appetite to learn, we don't get closer to Tao that way. That's what Lao Tzu said. We don't get closer to Tao through study. Not my words, Lao Tzu's words. This is a little sidetrack. There's an idea in Taoism is sometimes called alchemy, which means going in reverse. So in our school, we get the fruit first, and then we do the cultivation. We don't do cultivation with the intent of getting some fruit at the end. That's not actually alchemy. That's chemistry that's going forward. Alchemy is going into reverse. So in our Wu Wei Dao cultivation group, we are introduced to the fruit. And once we're introduced to the fruit, then, let's cultivate. Let's cultivate. This cultivating within the atmosphere of a ripened fruit. It's a different experience than cultivating with a heart that is aspiring to attain some fruit. A heart that is aspiring to attain some fruit is an unripe practitioner. And that's not the approach that I received from my teacher. I received the fruit. And now within the context of this ripe fruit, let's cultivate. So our options become open. How are we going to cultivate? And that is dictated not so much by tradition. We can be a traditionalist, but it's really, it's inspired from our actual experience. And we say there are 4 mandated practices: breathing, eating, moving, and resting. That's all. But there are ways to breathe, ways to eat, ways to move, ways to rest that will lead to different states of stuckness or ease. We don't want to say we're going for ease, but we're certainly not going for stuckness. So the kind of the realm of Taoist practice from our perspective is, all right, well, how do we engage our conduct of whatever our formal practice is? If we're going to sit still, if we're going to have some kind of a movement practice or visualization or breathing practice or something, how are we using this as a means of expressing our natural, uncontrived experience? So yeah, knowing some historic cultural context is nice. Knowing some philosophy and symbolism is nice. But Taoism is an embodied practice. It's a practicing tradition. And so we say there's 3 aspects of Taoist practice. These are hygiene, or qi hygiene, meditation, and ritual. By qi hygiene, this is, how do we manage we say jing, qi, and shen, our embodied experience? How are we managing our lives? That's qi hygiene. So maybe we do some Tai Chi practice. Maybe we have ways of bathing or ways of breathing. So hygiene is part of the apprenticeship. And then meditation. So the meditation is of course centered in Zhuang, but we also want to explore other approaches. And from that, we pull in different perspectives. We bring a lot of perspectives from Zen, because I studied with a very great Zen master Sung San from Korea. This is where I get this and Zen Master Sung San's teaching really related very intimately with the Tao Te Ching. So when my Wu Wei Dao teacher, who was Liu Ming again, he had been a Buddhist monk back in the 1970s and eventually was adopted by a Taoist hermit into his family tradition of Orthodox Taoism. That Wu Wei Dao was kind of a stream running through that tradition. When Liu Ming came back to America from Taiwan, where he met his Taoist teacher, he turned in his Buddhist robes to Zen Master Sun San, who was my Zen teacher. So it's an interesting connection. So I bring in perspectives from different schools of Zen, which, historically, it's always, for over a millennia, been really informative and helpful for particularly Taoist practitioners to look at Buddhist perspectives and help to clarify their own practice or adjust their own practice. It's been happening for 1,000 or 1,500 years. And so I draw on my experience of practicing with Zen Master Sun San and also Suzuki Roshi's teaching of Soto Zen, very influential in our school. Suzuki Roshi was Liu Ming's first meditation teacher. But we also get into Jindan practice. Jindan, which is gold elixir or internal alchemy, Neidan. And our approach to Jindan is that, well, it arises spontaneously if we actually practice Zhuang. Jindan can be a very complex practice that is a very long, arduous path, right? We take Wu Wei Dao as the basis, and we discover naturally arising sweetness that is satisfying beyond description. Call this gold elixir. But the gold elixir tradition has a lot of preliminary practices or support practices that can be very helpful to our actual practice of Zhuang. So we explore different approaches to meditation, but again, we only introduce these after an initial initiation into Zhuang. So we're introducing them in the context of fruit, not in the context of here's some things you need to do in order to go get something. And kind of recap a bit. So we've got this kind of academic side. We've got philosophy, hygiene, meditation, and finally is ritual. We're not really a ritual tradition, but we do have some ritual here. Bowing. You gotta bow. If you're not willing to bow, I don't think I want to practice with people who are not willing to bow. So maybe that's the only ritual we have. Okay, that's enough. But maintaining an altar is a historically central aspect of Taoist practice. We view maintaining an altar as like a Wai Dan as part of Jin Dan practice. It's a, call it external alchemy. It's a way of working with space. It's a way of expressing our experience and adjusting chi in space, and helping to set up our practice space. And some chanting is nice. Study of different Taoist scriptures, just enough, not too much. We don't need to get too drawn into what can become a quagmire of a heavy tradition. That can be cool, but it can be a burden that actually squashes what is Da. Da is the inherent presence of Tao within our own heart. It's already there. We want to engage this beautiful tradition in a way to reveal what's here, but that doesn't mean we have to be traditionalists, because part of Taoism means recognizing our own genetic history. And if we are Westerners, we may come from a long line of Protestant practitioners and non-traditionalists. So if that is within our, say, our pre-celestial nature, we don't need to reject that history to go take on another culture. That's not actually. We have this idea of orthodoxy. As I've been using this term orthodoxy lately, and I think it kind of disturbs Westerners, because who cares about orthodoxy? And that's part of the very aspect of being a Westerner, is to kick the orthodoxy to the curb. But actually, if you look more deeply into that, it's the Western history that's kind of within our own chi pattern, is to out hypocrisy and to kick tradition to the side when it deviates from true orthodoxy. In one sense, that was call it the revolution of Jesus Christ, right? Kicking aside the orthodoxy of the day. And then the Catholic Church became totally corrupt. So Martin Luther comes along and kicks that to the curb. So the Protestant Reformation is such a important historic event that we as Westerners, I would recommend that we find the Protestant Reformation within our own embodied experience. It's a really, really important part of our experience. And it is at the heart of the United States of America, the founding of the United States of America, and not only kicking out the Pope, but kicking out the King. We kicked out the King. So this idea of America is the individual is at the center. The individual is the power center. That pattern is deeply ingrained into our experience. So we should look into this. And coming from wherever we're coming from, now we have this teaching of Lao Tzu that asks us to relax where we're coming from and settle into not to take on some new form, some new tradition, but not to hold on to where we're coming from either. Relax it all and find ourselves simply abiding effortlessly in the indistinct heart of reality. We don't have to reach to get there. So if any of this sounds interesting, if you've managed to make it to the end of this talk, probably want to go check out our website, again, www.oldoakdao.org. And there are a few recorded talks on there, and you can access our blog and read the blog articles. And we open our Wu Wei Dao cultivation group around the Chinese New Year each year. Thank you for listening. I'm going to give you a bell.